Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Shipping Excellence Podcast. Today I have with me Malvika Jethmalani, who's a co-founder of Athos Group. Today she's going to talk about building AI-friendly cultures, how AI meets employee experience, leading successful AI transformations, and power skills in the age of AI. Malvika, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much, Duncan. It's great to be here. I'm a three-time CHRO, but I didn't start my career in human resources. I actually started in accounting and finance. And so I bring a very data-oriented and analytical bent to everything that I do from a people perspective. So I describe my core skill set as I help organizations draw insights out of data and analytics to inform people decisions. And last year, I co-founded Atlas Group with my co-founder. And Atlas Group is a human capital advisory firm driven by the core belief that to win in the marketplace, businesses must first win in the workplace.
That's awesome. I'm excited to hear about your beliefs. I'm a big believer in human beings, people over process. So tell us a little bit about why culture is such a critical component when building an AI powered organization.
Yeah, so first of all, when I work with leaders, I first try to understand what is their definition of culture. Because when we talk about culture, a lot of CEOs think of ping pong tables and happy hours. But to me, culture is so much more than that. It's about how your leaders show up for their people every day. It's how you give each other feedback, how you build and ship products, how you serve your customers, how you run your meetings. You get the idea, right? So culture is all about how you manage the business. It's not owned by HR. It's not owned by the CEO, although the CEO is in the driver's seat, but everyone else needs to be in the car. Every single person plays a part and everyone owns culture. And so if you're aligned with that way of thinking of culture, then it's kind of a natural graduation to the next thought, which is that to run any transformation, AI or non AI, you need to take culture into account. And we know from studies that most digital initiatives unfortunately fail. And it's because almost 70% of organizations try to adopt new technologies without reimagining or without changing the way that people work. And so when you look at this data, you start to understand why these initiatives often don't meet expectations. And that's precisely why I think culture matters.
I agree 100%. I mean, I've been inside of organizations who were going through digital transformations where they didn't go well, and from my experience, I've seen it go wrong a number of ways, but I think the biggest is the rejection by the body, the company, the people, right? If you don't bring them along, if they're not a part of the decision making process, if they're not bought in, you can embed all the technology you want into your organization, but they're not going to adopt it, right? And it's not going to be a part of it's not going to become a cohesive piece of your organization. Tell me, what role does trust play in bringing employees along in the AI journey?
Yeah, for me, trust is non-negotiable. Running a team or an organization without trust, to me, it's like trying to build a house on a shaky foundation. It just doesn't work. But what's really alarming to me is in today's workplace, we have an enormous employer-employee trust deficit. And you can see that reflected in business practices. If you just read the news, all of these sort of top-down draconian return to office mandates, the tracking of badge swipes in the office, the tracking of keyboard and mouse activity. All of these measures send a signal to your people that you don't trust them. And of course, we know that trust is a two-way street. And so when you don't feel trusted by your employer, you're also less likely to trust them. And so no wonder, and I mentioned this in my blog post, no wonder that only a third of employees say that they trust the top management in their company. And you get what you measure, right? So if your metrics are face time and presenteeism, then you get behaviors that are designed to sort of check those boxes of face time and presenteeism. So when employers started to track keyboard activity and mouse activity, what happened? Mouse jiggler sales went up, right? People started to adopt office coffee badging practices where people would come in and swipe in and grab a coffee and leave. And so people started to take turns going into the office and saying, okay, today it's my turn to go and swipe everyone's badge. So you see where I'm going. When you send the message to your people that you don't trust them, they're not going to become more productive and say, oh, let's hop on the AI train. And I want to help my organization with this AI transformation so that they can drive even more profitable growth. They're more likely to be skeptical of not only upper management, but of all of the initiatives that are being cascaded down from upper management. And they're more likely to engage in behaviors like quiet quitting, or just simply trying to sort of stay under the radar. And that's, I think, the opposite of engagement. Engagement is all about people caring, people feeling a connection between their work and the broader purpose of the organization, and people expending that discretionary effort for the organization and going above and beyond. And for AI initiatives to succeed, we need engaged employees. And engaged employees are productive employees, but to drive engagement, we need to lay that foundation of trust. So when I encounter leaders who have an environment of low trust in their organization, I tell them to take a pause. Rather than throwing more money at these AI initiatives or whatever business transformation initiative you've taken on, I would say really stop and take a hard and honest look at your culture and ask yourself, what are you as a CEO and your broader leadership team, what are you doing to contribute to that environment of low trust? And what can you start, stop, and continue doing to improve the trust within your organization? And then once you've made a dent there, then continue to invest more in AI and other transformation initiatives.
Yeah, I just had lunch with a really good buddy of mine yesterday, and I hadn't seen him in a few years. And he and I have built several engineering teams over the years. And I texted him after lunch and I said, it was so good to see you. You know, some of my most fondest memories was working with him, building these teams, building these high performing software engineering teams. And what I remember from these were stressful periods where we were under really, really tight deadlines, had to launch products, you know, had to remediate issues as they came up. And it was still like one of the most fondest times in my career was working with him and the teams that we've built. And I think a lot of that is because even though it was stressful and we had deadlines and sometimes we worked nights and weekends, it was because we all trusted each other. Like we liked working with each other because we knew we could rely on one another. And so I'm curious, what are like some tactical, concrete things that leaders who are trying to build trust within the organizations can do?
There's a few things. First, make sure that you're consistent in aligning your words with your actions. Often, leaders tend to lose trust because they approach, whether it's a new policy or a process or a transformation initiative, they approach it with the mindset that there's one way of doing things for the rest of you, and there's another way of doing things for the few of us at the top with the important jobs. And even when all of these RTO mandates came out, for example, there have been executives across multiple companies that roll out these mandates for the rest of the population, and yet the executive team continues to have the flexibility that they want and need. And so role modeling behaviors that you seek in your employees and the rest of your leaders is, I think, critical. Making sure that your words match your actions is critical. And I'm not just talking about one day, 1 week, 1 month. All the time, over and over, consistently, you need to say what you're going to do and then do what you had said you would do. And if the course of business changes, if you need to pivot and you need to backtrack, tell people what happened, be as transparent as you can, explain the reason behind your decisions, explain what alternatives you considered, and treat people like the adults that they are, and treat people with the human dignity that they deserve in the workplace. So I think so much of this ultimately comes down to treat people like people first and employees second.
Yeah, yes. I agree 100%. You know, when I think about and talk about building high performing teams, I say we're all adults and we're all professional adults who are passionate and interested in the career path that we've chosen, right? So we like what we're doing for the most part. And when you treat people like people first and make them a part of the organization as opposed to a piece of the organization to be managed, you get the best results. Like they care about their work. They want to produce high quality work. And I'm a believer that, take care of the employees first and they'll take care of the customers. I see this posted on LinkedIn all the time, but I believe that, right? Like, so your work in, human capital as it relates to AI, what got you interested or inspired in exploring AI in the workplace?
Yeah, so, AI, as many of us know, AI has been a part of our lives for a while. And it's it's become more mainstream now. And so it's in the news more. And when I say it's become more mainstream, what I mean is regular people like us have access to the power of AI, specifically Gen AI now, and a lot of tools that are directly advertised to or targeted toward individual consumers. And so I think that's very exciting. But if you think about our consumer journeys, if you buy a book on Amazon, you get very personalized recommendations on what to buy next. If you listen to an artist on Spotify, you get recommendations on which other artist in this genre you might want to listen to. And so, as we think about our consumer journeys, we've had AI enabled personalization for a while now. And if I think about our employee experience journeys, it's almost like in our personal lives, we are living the Jetsons life. And then when we go to work, we are faced with the reality of the Flintstones life, outdated tech. It's hard to find the information that you need. It doesn't work all the time. And what got me really interested is when AI started to be in the news so much, I realized that there's so much potential here to enhance the employee experience journey. Because for all intents and purposes, the workplace tools and technology we use now are our workplace. We used to gather in offices to do work. Now we gather on the internet to do work. And that's really what's fascinating to me about AI in the workplace. And part of what Gen AI has done, and why I think this is one of the most powerful technological advances of our lifetime, is it's making us question the fundamental definition of what it means to be human. I mean, in some parts of the world, people are making real connections with AI. So if you've heard of Chowice, the AI chatbot developed by Microsoft engineers in China, the 20 million people have said, I love you to her. And she's not even a real woman. She's a friend, she's a confidant, she's an AI chatbot, but she can write poetry, she can paint, she appears on TV shows, and she's learning all of this from her conversations with human beings. And the goal is for her to basically learn how to be more human every day with every conversation and every interaction with humans. And people often chat to Chowice for hours, and people send her gifts and they send her love letters and they invite her to dinner. There was a group of 5 students that made a reservation for 6 with the hopes that Chowice would show up to dinner. And so when you think about the way in which humans are starting to develop these connections with AI, it sort of behooves us to think about the role of AI in the workplace and how it could potentially make work and workplaces better.
Yeah, the last episode I did, I picked up the book. It's called Range. It was with Chris James, and I started reading the book. And the premise of the book so far, I'm on chapter two, but the premise is like the difference between AI's capability and what humans are capable of is learning without knowing rules or without structure. It talks about kind learning and or kind worlds and wicked worlds. And when you live in the real world, it's considered the wicked world because you don't have rules. It is wide open, and you learn through your experiences with that world. And the primary difference between AI's capability and human capability is we can learn without knowing the rules, and we learn by experimenting and learning the rules as we go. And AI is not quite capable of that. Although I think we are starting chart that path with worlds where we give AI a like a snapshot of a world or a situation. The example is your room is dirty and you want to have it cleaned, and then you tell I want the room to be clean. You give it a few rules, like don't kill me in the process, right? We don't want that outcome. But then because it can construct this world and then trial and error over millions of iterations or maybe billions of iterations, can figure out and learn how to clean the room, right? You give it the final state so it knows that. And so giving AI these worlds to learn in without having many of the rules in place is one step closer to getting to AGI as opposed to just Gen AI, which is what we have now. So I'm curious how you're seeing organizations use AI in the workplace today. How are they experiencing it? How are they experimenting with it?
Yeah, I talk to a lot of organizations that are doing hackathons and pilot programs and creating safe spaces for employees to experiment. And I think that's exactly the way to do it. So in terms of how is AI showing up in the HR world, just to sort of bring it to life, I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of the tools that comes to mind here is Culture Amp. If you're in the HR space, you're probably very familiar with Culture Amp. It's an AI tech platform. I've used it mostly for employee engagement and employee sentiment type of work in the past, but it can do much more than that. Um, and Culture Amp's AI can help you identify early warning signals for all groups. So you can now start to see who might be a retention risk, who might leave, and what might motivate them to stay. And then you can customize reports for demographics. So if you're concerned about retaining top talent on your engineering team, for example, you can filter for engineers who are high performers and look at their likelihood of leaving by office location. So you'll see where you risk losing people and why. And then you have insights into specific actions that you can take to retain that talent. So it starts to give you a very personalized strategy on how you can tackle retention challenges across various teams. And that's great because I think this is our moment because for decades upon decades, as you know, in the HR community, we've been saying we want to be more strategic, we want to be less tactical, we want to be more proactive and not reactive. And now there are tools that allow us to do that. The other one that I talk about a lot, and it's not just because I'm involved with this organization on their advisory board, but I genuinely think they're building something special, and that's kindred minds. So we all know from Gallup data that 70% of the variance in employee engagement can be attributed to your direct manager. And I think we're all painfully aware of the state of leadership development today, right? Managers are struggling. Were already struggling prior to the pandemic, and things have only gotten worse in the last few years. It's probably because we have this seismic wave of workplace changes, hybrid, remote, employee expectations are changing. We had the great resignation a couple years ago. Gen Z is coming into the workforce. And of course, AI, right? So what it means to lead and manage people in today's world of work is significantly different from what it meant just 4 or 5 years ago. And so, no wonder 70% of managers say that they don't feel equipped to lead in today's hybrid, complex, post pandemic world of work. And then what happens when we try to roll out manager training is often we're told from business leaders, oh, we can't take managers away from their day jobs for a 2 day, 3 day, 4 day workshop. And even if you get the approval to put all of that effort in and create the training and you bring people together, typically in a classroom session, it's a one size fits none training. The learning doesn't stick. People might be excited about it for a few days, but they're going to go back to their desks and revert to the same behaviors again. And it's because we're not meeting people where they are. And so what Kindred Minds does is it takes the power of an executive coach and it's scaling it to all of your leaders, because that in the moment coaching is lacking, right? So it's it's integrated with Slack where you're already working. It's integrated with your calendar and your video calls. It also knows the leader's personality type, what you're working on with each of your direct reports, what you discuss during your team meetings. It has your company's manager toolkits. And so it can take that into account when it's coaching you, and it knows your preferred coaching style. So it's giving you real-time AI-powered nudges. It can even listen to your one-on-ones with your people as long as you give it permission, obviously. And it follows up with very specific, tailored feedback and coaching for the leader. And to me, this is a game changer, because how many times as HR leaders or as leaders have we said, I wish I could sit in my manager's meetings and give them coaching and feedback and prevent all of these fires. And Kindred is like having a professional coach on each call and with each interaction with your team. And it's literally meeting people where they are. And I think it's a tremendously useful tool, not just for leadership development, but for employee engagement and retention as well. So those are just a couple of sort of real life examples.
I spent many hours reading many books to learn. Like I was deliberate when I was trying to learn leadership, and if I had a tool like that, it would have been nice. Just like real world, in the action of one-on-ones and team meetings and goal setting and career development, career pathing. That sounds. It's interesting to hear that use case, because one of the ones that I'm familiar with and I thought was really impactful was companies are using AI to read through all of their customer interactions, so emails, reviews, Google reviews, ratings, things like that, and they're using AI to synthesize that into weekly meetings, so the internal teams can get better at providing support, right? Providing this customer support to their clients. And so it really takes to synthesize all of that data for a person would take an exorbitant amount of time and energy. So AI can do that for you and give you the bullet points. It gives you the summary, so that way you can then see across the organization the patterns of problems or support issues that customers are experiencing, and then go spend time and energy on those, right? So to ultimately improve the quality of the service that your company offers.
What you're mentioning, very similar use case in the HR world as well. So whether it's Culture Amp or other tools, there's tools now that can look at all of the employee feedback. So if you run an engagement survey, they can look at all of the qualitative feedback in the comments and synthesize it into key themes. I remember early in my career when I was an HR business partner, we would do these surveys and it would take me weeks upon weeks, because I would have to read through every single comment, because you want to read every employee's comment. And then you would sit there and pull out key themes. And of course, we're human, right? So we're not perfect. And I'm so excited about this use case, because what would happen in the past is we would do these surveys, we would ask employees for feedback, and then it would be weeks before we could even present the information to the leaders to say, these are the key things that are top of mind for our people. And by the time you take action, the feedback is already out of date. The employees have moved on and now they have a new problem. And so I love that we can now act in real time, almost real time, in responding to employees' feedback. And I love that as HR people, we can now focus on the human aspects of human resources, not sitting there reading line by line, poring over this data, trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, I love that. Like people, humans are trying to tell you something. So like you can focus on the
Hmm.
thing that they're trying to tell you now, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so organizations are setting aside large budgets for 2025 to begin adopting AI for a number of reasons, right? The age-old digital transformation, operational efficiency, better customer service, better employee and management engagement, and it's like any new thing that you do, it's going to be hard because it's new. We don't really know. We don't know what we don't know. So what are some things that organizations should do to make sure that where they deploy this capital will be successful? What are some of the problems that should be aware of, the potential problems that they should be aware of? And then how do they go about leading this successful transformation?
My first guidance to leaders is always start by defining the business problem you're trying to solve. Too many leaders, at least leaders that I talk to, want to push the proverbial easy button and slap the AI sticker on things and call it a day, either because they're suffering from shiny object syndrome or they read somewhere that their competitor is using AI, right? And if you remember, when smartphones came out, there was this ad that said, you want to do this? There's an app for that. And you want to do that? And there's an app for that. And now I feel like we need an ad like that for AI. You want to do this? There's an AI for that. And there's actually a website called there's an AI for that.com. And I think it's pretty cool. But my point is, there's a lot of AI tools out there and different tools solve different problems. And so I think it's really important for leaders to identify what it is that they're trying to solve from a business perspective. How does all of this connect to their overall overarching business strategy? And and to your earlier point, start with the why, right? And one of the examples of a situation where I think this wasn't done or it wasn't well thought out is a few months ago. There's an organization called Lattice, HR tech company, for those who don't know. And Lattice decided to announce a few months ago that they were going to have digital employees or virtual employees, and they would have the ability to onboard and manage these virtual employees within their system within Lattice. And people started to ask a lot of questions like, why? What is the purpose of having these digital employees? How will they be managed? How will they be onboarded? Who will manage them? And what does it mean for the human jobs on my team? And Lattice just simply did not have an answer to these questions. And I will give them credit. They were humble enough to say, you know what, people in the HR community are asking smart questions. We hadn't thought about these things. We're going to pause and we're going to go back and do some more work, but we're not going to pursue the digital workers initiative at this point. And I think this is why the why matters. Um, and I think that is probably the biggest miss from leaders. And so I would say start by defining the business problem. And then once you have the business problem, then start to prepare your people and culture for that journey, as we said earlier, and make sure you're building on that strong foundation of trust.
Because AI is so powerful, employees also can gain skills very quickly, right? The technical skills that they need to do their job, they can ask ChatGPT, how do I do this thing, right? I think the companies who will succeed are the ones who use it to reduce costs without losing their talent. And that allows them to scale and then ultimately catapults them ahead of the competition in the future. So, how does an employee who is riding the wave of this transformation set themselves apart from the person sitting next to them when technical skills can be acquired a lot easier?
I could not agree with you more. I think it's becoming easier to acquire technical skills. Um, I am not a graphic designer, but as I'm, launching and scaling my business, I have graphic design needs from time to time, and now there's AI tools to help me with that. And I can do some basic graphic design now. By no means am I an expert, but I can get by and I can meet the needs of my business, at least at this stage. So I think because it's getting easier to acquire these technical skills, my belief is what's going to happen in the age of AI is the soft skills will become the power skills. So if you think about the time that we spend interacting with each other as humans, it's gone down, right? We used to go and buy groceries, and we would run into people or talk to the cashier. You can now order groceries without interacting with a human being. You can now order coffee without without interacting with someone. You can you can take public transportation without interacting with someone. And so all of these sort of touch points that we had with each other have been reduced. It's probably going to plummet even more when we have driverless cars and God knows what else, AI nannies. And because our opportunities to connect with each other are going to plummet, I think human to human connection is going to come at a premium. And interacting with other humans, learning how to show empathy, learning how to influence, learning how to build, nurture relationships, that is going to be, I think, the set of skills that's going to be power skills. And so I urge everyone who thinks about sort of future proofing their career in the age of AI to think about what are your strongest power skills and where do you need to do some work and really start to hone those power skills, because I think those are really going to go at a premium in the future. And that is probably one of the best ways in which you can future proof your career development. I think not only should we think about this as individuals in our careers, but organizations need to think about what power skills will they need in the future. So a few years ago, it was the pandemic. Then it was the Great Resignation. Then it was quiet quitting. Now it's AI. Tomorrow it might be something else. We don't know what that something else is. But what we do know is that the volume and pace of change are only going to continue to accelerate, which means that our leaders are going to need to show up with empathy. They're going to need to manage continuous change. Change management used to be a once or twice a year thing that you would undertake for your big initiatives. Now, change management is a constant. And so how do we equip our leaders with those skills, those power skills to lead in the future of work? That is a question that I would be asking myself as a CEO.
You know, in the book range that I'm reading right now, it talks about the premises that generalists are more equipped to handle change like this than people who are deep specialists, and they use a number of studies and examples to sort of make that point. And I think about how that applies today in AI and Deep Blue, the chess engine that beat Kasparov. It beat him because it could do something like 200 million, calculations of moves and pick the best one. And a human can't do that many, right? And so the tactical execution there is automated by the engine. And I think that's what we're seeing with Gen AI now is like with the agentic workflows is a lot of the tactical execution can be at a minimum augmented, maybe in a few years, completely automated. And it will be the people who have power skills, who can do strategy, and who are exceptional generalists, meaning they're able to take the bigger picture with less rules, which is what humans are good at doing, and figuring out the best path forward, and then leave the tactical to the machines, as they become more and more powerful at executing those. So there's a really good episode on the Acquired podcast about Starbucks and about the founder, the CEO and founder of Starbucks, and what what he thinks of the Starbucks mobile app, where you can just hit the button, your coffee's sitting on the counter waiting for you, and you can just go pick it up. And he said if he could do it again, he wouldn't build the app, because what that did was take away the human interaction piece of Starbucks. And his whole vision for Starbucks was it was about the connection. It was about the human connection, coming in, getting the coffee, talking to your barista. And so I agree with you. I think that's very important.
Yeah, because his inspiration for Starbucks came from when he visited Italy, right? And visited the cafes there and got to understand the cafe culture, and that is all about human to human connection and interaction.
Do you think AI could ever develop or replicate soft skills?
So we talked earlier about the example of Chow Ice, right? And you could argue she is displaying pretty human-like behavior and skills. We also have now AI-enabled therapy is becoming a thing. So many of our interactions are already being replaced by machines, and maybe in the future we won't even need to do this. Maybe my avatar will talk to your avatar, and our AI assistants will set up time for our avatars to talk. I don't know. And so I think that's I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that what makes us fundamentally human is the connection that we have with each other, and I think we need to work to preserve that.
It was a pleasure talking to you. I learned a lot. This was an amazing conversation. I enjoyed it.
Likewise, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Have a good one.
You too.